Welcome to the Wildlife for You podcast and the Old Man Johnson series.
Hi, and welcome to the Wildlife for You podcast, where we talk about those confusing and controversial wildlife topics, and we do the unthinkable. We ask you to think. We're not here to sway you into believing one side or the other, but rather we try to give you both sides of the story so you can decide for yourself on where you fall on the issue.
Dang, Steph, I kind of like how you just described our podcast there, but you do know we're asking a lot from people, all the peoples out there, because I think thinking for yourself kind of went out of style pretty much when social media was invented. I would say people nowadays usually let tweets and TikTok videos and memes and social media influencer types, they're the ones that pretty much shape people's way of thinking.
Do they still call it tweeting since Elon rebranded it?
Yes, I still call it tweeting, and that's all that matters.
I mean, maybe now we should call
They
it
call it
Xing.
Xing.
Yeah, it sounds like my marriage history, doesn't it? Anyhow, anyhow, you probably should be careful with that though, Dee, because wouldn't podcasts also kind of fall into that category of shaping the way people think?
Oh, absolutely. And just so you know, I listen to quite a few what you'd call wildlife podcasts. And it's really interesting because if you listen to those kinds of podcasts often enough, you'll find we're often talking about the exact same issues over and over again. But you know as well as I, like the wildlife world, meaning kind of the people who live and make a career out of wildlife, it's not very big.
And let me guess, depending on the topic, the podcasters have wildly different points of view.
Oh, absolutely. And almost everything out there it's kind of slanted towards the values that like those individual podcasters have. For example, some of them may be heavily slanted towards conservation, while others might be slanted towards preservation. Then you have like pro-predator, anti-predator, pro-hunting, anti-hunting. You get the conservative, liberal, right, left. It's nauseating sometimes, I swear. Anyway, the more I listen to people, the more I understand why certain beliefs are so strongly entrenched in some people.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, and that was a dizzying list for the record. But, if people only listen, though, to one side of the story, that's all they're going to know. So that's definitely going to play into all they're going to believe.
Yeah, and I believe people are losing their ability to think critically. And it's not because all sides of a story are not out there. It's simply because people choose not to listen to the other side of the story.
Yeah, and I think that's what satisfies me the most about our podcasting because, I mean, sure, you and I, we both have our own biases. For example, we tend to be more pro-wildlife than pro-human, but we try to present both sides of an issue, even if we completely disagree with it. But at least we don't tune out the other side.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why today's episode is going to be really, really interesting. You know as well as I, this past week, Old Man Johnson and Miss Hazel over there, they got into a pretty heated discussion about bear spray. Now, I know how you and I fall very firmly on one specific side of this bear spray topic, but you got to admit, folks who take one side or the other in this bear spray debate, they're often pretty adamant about their own beliefs. Like they're like, this is the way it should be, and there's no wiggle room there.
I think that is the problem inherent with beliefs, right? Like that's the way of them. But before we dive into our bear spray issue, I do want to take a minute to remind everyone how opportune this topic is right now because we recently had two very serious incidents involving brown bear or grizzly bear attacks. One was in Yellowstone and the other one was in Glacier. And sadly, the Glacier incident did result in a fatality. And as you can expect, the bear spray debate has risen again, and it seems to be front and center right now. Although our podcast tries to keep things lighthearted and fun, bear attacks are very serious events. They deeply impact everyone involved. So our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone that's been affected in those parties by those recent attacks.
No, that was very well said, Steph. I'm glad you did that. And just so you know, I should remind everyone that Stephanie here, she used to coordinate wildlife human attack response training for state and federal and provincial agencies, I should add, because there's Canadian folks involved. So if there's anyone on this discussion that knows the seriousness of bear attacks, it's my good friend here.
Thanks for that, Dee. So now let's be done with the somberness, but stay serious and talk about today's topic, which is bear spray. To spray or not to spray? That is the question.
Yeah, that is the question. I must ask, how do we stay serious on this issue when I'm about to play the audio clip from this week's conversation between Old Man Johnson and #Hazel?
Okay, well, no one said that we can't be serious, but still, like, we can be serious and still have fun. Like, those things are not mutually exclusive. So why don't you go ahead and play that clip, Dee?
All right, here's how our good friends Mr. Johnson and Miss Hazel, if I could find the clip, because I always do so poorly at this. This is how Mr. Johnson and Miss Hazel brought up the topic of bear spray. Are we ready?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited I can barely contain myself. Our Digital Photo Naturalist Club on Instagram is thinking about planning a virtual tour through Yellowstone and the Northern Rockies. We're going to be able to see all sorts of fascinating and adorable creatures.
A virtual whatchamacallit on Insta who? What in blue blazes are you talking about?
It's a virtual tour, Mr. Johnson. You need to get with the times. We are going to pay someone to wear a GoPro and walk around Yellowstone and live stream it. Me and my Digital Nature Club are going to get to see all the cool things they encounter on their hikes. Don't you do anything with nature anymore?
Well, I hope your virtual friend over there is packing a 6-shooter. Them grizzly bars are nothing to mess around with. They'll tear a feller up pretty good. Yeah, I always pack a big old gun with me to fend off them bars.
They're grizzly bears, Mr. Johnson, not bars. And no, they will not be packing a gun with them. They will be carrying bear spray with them, since it is a much better and more eco-friendly choice when dealing with uncooperative bears.
I don't care none about cooperating with no bar if he's fixin' to eat me, and I definitely ain't wasting my time spraying that pepper seasoning at them. That just makes them madder and me taste better. I swear you yuppie types come up with the craziest ideas. Ain't nothing better than a good old gun in bar country.
Well, there you have it, Steph. What you think about their conversation there?
Well, first off, I want to become one of those virtual tour guides. Can you imagine getting to hike around like Yellowstone and getting paid to do that?
Well, as a matter of fact, I can. And one of these days, I'll get you to join me on one of my Green Fire Tour adventures again. You did it once, but I got to get you back there again. But
Shameless plug.
shameless plug, and we could fill you in more about that. But you wouldn't believe on that tour last year that we did, the wildlife encounters we had. But alas, we're not here to talk about my ecotourism/wildlife gig. So let's break down this bear spray debate. So explain to me, what is the issue here?
Okay, well, that should be easy enough. So, as you know, there's lots of bears in North America. Black bears are found throughout Canada, and in most of the U.S. states, brown bears, or I should say grizzly bars, their populations are doing well. Though they're far from historic numbers, the grizzly population throughout like the greater Yellowstone ecosystem area and the Northern Rockies, that seems to be kind of like stable or growing. And as you know, Western Canada and Alaska have long been a foothold for grizzlies. And of course, in the far northern reaches of our continent, we have our good old friends, the crispy little polar bears. They're so cute.
Yeah, so it sounds like bears are doing really good. So it sounds like an ideal situation.
You would think so, but on the flip side, guess which other population is growing?
I know it's not our listeners.
No, it is not our listeners, but you did guess the right species. It's humans. The human population continues to grow, not only in numbers, but in geographic reach. People are spreading out more and more and more, and we're invading what has historically been bear country, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And obviously, as those two populations continue to grow, we're talking bear populations and human populations. And what ends up happening is we're occupying the same spaces in many situations. And simply put, we're going to end up with more and more bear-human conflict.
Yeah. And I know that this is your shtick, and you would love to talk about bear encounters and bear behaviors and, God forbid, hibernation. Um, but but let's talk about that uber rare, but always newsworthy, and I mean big time newsworthy. It's usually global bear attack. This is when a bear tries to make physical contact with a human.
Yeah, and given like the size and strength of most bears, I'd say hand-to-hand combat's not going to go too well for the average human. So humans typically need some type of deterrent to prevent an attack, especially if it's like gonna happen no matter what. Anyway, they need some kind of tool that will hopefully stop an attack from happening or possibly end an attack after it already starts.
Bum, ba, bum. This is where the debate begins because there are two primary camps when it comes to defending yourself in bear country. There's those that believe bear spray is the best option, and then there's those who believe a firearm or a gun is the only way to go. So, D, let's break it down. Let's talk about the pros and cons of each.
All right. You want to flip a coin to see who gets kind of what instrument to talk about? So, heads or tails?
Heads. I'll take bear spray.
What? That wasn't the option there.
No. It was. I didn't wait for the. I don't have a coin. I don't have a coin. Okay, I know. But let's just say I won, and I'll talk about bear spray. See, I win all the time.
Yeah. Fine. You can talk about bear spray, but because it is kind of like my specialty, I may interject at times, especially if and when. No, I shouldn't say when, but if you mess up, I'm
Okay.
jumping in there.
Deal. I mean, you jump in there anyway, so I'll do the same when you talk about guns. So after all, besides besides being the better shot, I probably know more about guns than you do anyway.
I'm trying not to come
Did you
back.
just eye roll so hard that you saw your brain? I'm pretty sure
I saw the back of my head, not my brain. So. All right, go ahead, Steph. You tell me why bear spray is better than my gun.
Oh, where to begin? Where to begin? Okay, let me start by describing what bear spray is and why it's so effective. And then I'll go into the specifics on why it's a better tool for the average Joe or Jane to carry, or wildlife biologist even, when you're in the country. So first off, bear spray is very much like mace or pepper spray that you see so often used by law enforcement officers. A scaled down version of it, you can even like order that, and it can be used by Joe Q Public or Jane Q Public for personal protection. Now, the ways these sprays work is that they contain a concentration of capsaicin, sometimes like capsaicin is kind of how you'll hear some other people.
English stuff. Just stick to English.
Sticking to English. That was English, goofball. That was just the science. Okay, fine. That was the scientific way of saying, OMG, that is some very hot pepper oil coming out of that. Being from Buffalo, you probably knows how it feels when you accidentally rub your eyes after eating like some hot chicken wings.
I don't know. I'd love very, very hot chicken wings, but I think I would know exactly how it would feel if I got it in my eyes. It's not
Yeah.
good.
No, it's not good, and it lingers. Like I have long nails, and if I eat chicken wings, I guarantee you, if I touch my eye, like 3 hours, 5 hand washes later, I'm still gonna know that I had chicken wings
Yeah.
for dinner. But those same chemicals, those capsaicins, they're then concentrated and put into essentially a pepper spray. If you've ever seen a crime video or videos of riots or anything like that where people are pepper sprayed, it's pretty effective at incapacitating people. It usually stops them in their tracks because they're in so much discomfort after getting that sprayed in their eyes and in their nose and then, mouth, any kind of orifice. You can barely breathe. And I mean that. Like if you're in a closed room and somebody deploys pepper spray, even not on you, if you're in that vicinity, you can barely breathe, let alone see. It definitely gets to you. So now let's talk about real life, hardcore, certified bear spray. So this is not, again, the little canister container with the keychain that you're hanging on your keys. Not only does it contain up to twice the concentration of the capsaicin, meaning it's twice as strong, but it is actually pressurized to spray much, much further than any even standard pepper spray. So it's going to be pretty darn effective.
Can I chime in here? Not that you said anything wrong, but I want to stress something to the people out there that don't think about, or rather they sometimes misinterpret things. Because I often hear people talk about how bears, they're not as phased by bear spray. They probably think like a bear or a grizzly or anything like that. They're so much bigger than a human, so it's not going to affect them as much when they get sprayed by bear spray. That point probably makes sense to a lot of people because like a bigger thing can tolerate more. But this is where they mess up. And you've probably listened to some of my bear talks, probably about 300 or 400 times. Do you recall my lesson on a bear's sense of smell?
The nose, the glorious nose. But yes, I use the same analogies or metaphors that you use in that for the examples when I am explaining this, because that is one of the most powerful messages that I think you can deploy. When you compare what a human can smell versus what a bloodhound can smell versus what a bear can smell, it is literally mind-boggling to try and comprehend. Based on the number of olfactory or scent receptors, isn't it something like bears have a sense of smell over like 2,000 times more powerful than a human's?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's the point that most people miss. Because just because a bear is bigger in stature than a human, it doesn't mean that it's less sensitive to bear spray. And in fact, when you think about it, a bear's nose is so much more sensitive because all of those olfactory receptors, which you mentioned, those receptors are literally hardwired to that bear's brain. They're like directly. It goes from there to the brain. It's not going anywhere else. It's immediate reactions. Therefore, in most cases, when a bear gets hit with a blast of bear spray or / pepper spray, we'll call it bear spray from here on out, it will more or less short circuit that bear's brain. And that bear almost always is going to absolutely forget everything that it's thinking about in regards to an attack. And they just want to get out of there. Their mind and body is just like a lightning bolt hit it with that bear spray.
Yeah. And here's another thing to consider. A bear attack, if it's preceded by a charge, people do not, like, I cannot, there's not even words in the human vocabulary to explain what a super high pressure situation that is. The benefit of a bear spray is if it's deployed properly, it puts up a wall of a chemical that a bear then has to run through to get to you. So in other words, you're not as pressured to hit an exact point with a tiny thing. So its effectiveness is not as reliant on your aim as a firearm. All right, it's probably a good time to go ahead and let you describe the effectiveness of a gun.
Yeah, well, first off, you did a really good job describing how bear spray typically works. Now, let me try to explain how a gun works. It's actually pretty simple, because instead of that pepper, capsaicin stuff, I use lead poisoning.
No. You are not getting off that easy. So explain to our folks how a gun can be a successful deterrent for a bear attack.
All right. Without being too sarcastic or nonchalant, it's pretty well known that guns are quite effective at killing things, including large animals like bears.
Yeah, so tell me, Dee, what kinds of guns were typically used to kill bears? Like, let's talk about how early Europeans pretty much wiped out most of them, or at least on the eastern half of the continent.
Well, we were very, very effective at doing that. But I would say throughout that whole time period when we were just getting rid of bears and other large predators, I'd say most of that dirty work was accomplished with what we call long guns, meaning like the rifles and the shotguns.
Yeah, and I would say that you're right. And for the benefits of our listeners who may not be as familiar with guns, would you say those long guns, the rifles and the shotguns, are they more powerful than, say, a handgun?
Typically, yes. The size of the bullet, now there's not going to be a tremendous difference in the size of the bullet, but the amount of gunpowder in that cartridge is usually much bigger in a long gun than, say, a handgun. So effectively, when we go back to physics class, but mass times velocity, the faster that thing goes, the more knockdown power it's going to have, so to speak. But just keep in mind, though a long gun like a rifle or a shotgun is going to have more immediate knockdown power than a handgun, keep in mind, Steph, a handgun will still kill you dead nonetheless.
True. But I want to keep this comparison going because most people use handguns for self-defense. So let me ask you this one. Which one is easier to aim? Well, no, because they're both easy to aim. So what I'm going for is which one is easier for you to hit your target?
Well, I know there's going to be some gun aficionados out there that will argue this response, but there really is no argument because it's the firearm with the longer barrel will tend to be much more accurate if you're given adequate time to aim. And the reason for that, if you're not familiar with guns, because that longer barrel will provide the spin to the bullet, which kind of makes the bullet spiral and makes it fly truer to its path. So it's definitely the long gun in that situation.
Yeah, and you're talking about the rifling, which is super cool. So what you're saying, if I boil that really down, is it's really important to have the time that you need to aim appropriately to hit your target, or at least to be reasonably close. And I'm not even considering the high pressure intensity of a life or death situation like a full-on freaking bear charge. And I don't suppose, I can't help it, Dee. Do you have any experience with that firsthand?
For those that don't know, Stephanie and I were out in the woods, and we may have been charged by a black bear, and I successfully fended off that charge because Stephanie could not get her gun up on it in time.
Wait, what? Hold up now. I had the long-range rifle. You had the short-range shotgun.
Anyway, I guess the point I'm going to... We are speaking from firsthand experience about a high-pressure situation because, like, we're just sitting there talking, and then before you know it, there's a bear charge. It's like you had 3 seconds to figure out what to do. So anyway, going back to your question about people having like experience with that high pressure, for 99% of the people out there, that's exactly what I'm saying. It would be really difficult to hit your target with a handgun, especially if it's moving fast and it's planning to kill you, actually. So just so you know, people can train for having those split-second shooting skills. I believe those folks are typically called like Navy SEALs or Army Rangers or something along those lines, but high-intensity training there. And yes, I did cover for my friend who couldn't even get off a shot.
Oh my God. We won't even talk about that more. Ugh. All right. So in other words, though, circling that block pack, handling a high pressure bear charge with a gun, it is possible, but it's not probable. It's probably not likely.
Yeah. For the average Joe or Jane, especially if they're not experienced with guns, I couldn't even imagine what that would be like, but I would say that's absolutely correct. Like, you can be a really good shot with a handgun. You practice a lot. Most people aren't practicing for like a surprise encounter to pull out your gun and hit the target. So anyway.
Thanks, Joe.
I'm the average Joe because I missed.
All right. The first shot was the best, or the first non-shot was the best. All right. One of these days we will tell everybody about that because that is a fantastic story.
And I will tell the story.
What?
First.
Not by yourself. No, you will not. I love you, but I don't trust you that much. Yeah. All right. Okay. So now say someone is actually lucky enough. We're gonna assume handgun here. So they're lucky enough to draw their handgun fast enough. And just so you know, people carrying bear spray will have the exact same issue when trying to deploy it fast enough. But let's say both the gun person and the bear spray person, they're able to to discharge their weapon. We now know how bear spray works. So how is that bullet going to do its job?
Well, unfortunately, like the bear spray, you put up the wall, the bear runs through it, gets in his nose, his eyes. It's effective that way. Unfortunately, when we're talking about a bullet, a little fragment, tiny piece of lead, that bullet has a much smaller area to hit on that bear in order for it to do its job. Now, we're talking about vital areas on a bear that may only be about 18 inches wide, and I'm talking about the chest area there. And unless you hit the bear's brain, which is probably even smaller, maybe only 5 or 6 inches wide, you're not likely to immediately stop that animal with that bullet. Now, even well-placed shots in the vitals, they may take a little time for the animal to expire. Now, keep in mind, if other shots hit the body but not the vitals, it could still deter the bear. But going for like a be-all, end-all, stop the bear dead in its tracks, you got tiny targets to hit when that bear's coming at you.
Tiny target with a tiny missile. So understood.
Yep.
I think the key thing here is that both methods can be effective if everything happens, the stars align, all of the planets are, perfect, if everything happens as it should. But the bear spray gives you a bit more wiggle room for things to not go that perfectly, which is really important, again, in those high pressure situations. So would you agree with that, Dee?
Oh, I agree with it completely. And this is me speaking from experience, having to save your life once already. And almost failing miserably because my shots missed, but they did deter the bear.
They did deter the bear. So let's talk a little bit more about the pros and cons of these bear deterrents. So what you got for me, gun boy?
Okay, how about this? Because I hear these arguments all the time. So at least with a gun, if I'm opting to carry a gun with me in bear country, at least I don't have to worry about the wind and which direction it's blowing, because I hear that all the time, that you got to be mindful of the wind when you use bear spray.
Well, Dee, it just so happens that bear spray has been tested under all sorts of conditions. Tom Smith, he's a well-known bear researcher. He tested the efficacy of bear spray.
Wait, can I quiz you? Do you know where Tom Smith is out of?
Montana?
Utah. He's over there. Out the window. I'm in Utah, so he's not far from me. I think he's at BYU, actually.
Oh, okay. All right, I did not know that. All right, so what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so Tom's like you were just saying, he's a well-known bear researcher, and he has tested the efficacy of bear spray. And the reason that I mention that is the study was not done by a person that invented or vested or produced or whatever. This is not done by a biased human being that wants to say bear spray's better because I make it and I need $1. So there is a lot less likelihood of bias.
Yeah, so like when you buy those products that was tested by the company that invented it and tells you how great it works, this was not the case. This is a well-known bear researcher. And so what did Mr. Tom Smith, what did he find out?
All right. So Mr. Smith found out that even in a headwind, so the wind coming right at you, or a crosswind, so going cross body, up to about 25 miles an hour, the bear spray will still hit its target up to 6 feet away, which brings up a point I should have made earlier about effective range, actually. So bear spray is not a long distance deterrent. It is an up close and personal. You typically shouldn't deploy bear spray unless you're pretty certain that bear is preparing to make contact with you. So it's going to be, again, a pretty close range tool. Obviously, situations vary tremendously, but bear spray is pretty much, it's a final option deterrent. I've had bear spray in my hand before, and I was literally holding my ground, waiting for the decision to hit me on if I use it or if I don't use it, because that is that final option. But hopefully your brain and your behavioral reactions won't let it actually get to that point, and then you don't have to deploy it.
And if I recall correctly, you had bear spray in one hand and a camera in the other, and you're like flashing it.
Yeah.
You weren't trying to take pictures. You were trying to distract it.
I was trying to, yeah, I was trying to at that point get the bear to not see me as like I'm making the bear so like I'm making the bear do a risk analysis, right? Like the bear is automatically in its head going, that thing is flashy. Like, do I really want to take on a human disco ball? I don't think so. So
Yeah. Yeah, but you brought up a good point, and that bear spray is a close-in instrument when it comes time to use it. And I will say, you do have a much longer reach when you're using a gun, but keep in mind a small target over 30 feet away is pretty hard to hit with a handgun. Short barrel, you're off just a microscopic half inch, and it's going to be a long ways off by the time it gets that bear. So anyway, more than likely, you're probably going to be using the gun at close range as well. And having said all this, there is an added benefit to the gun because there's that report from a firearm. For those that don't know what that word means, it's that loud bang, that loud crack, the boom when the gun goes off. And that potentially could also deter an animal from approaching. So that is one added benefit to a gun.
yeah, and I know that you mentioned a handgun specifically, but it's also very hard to, even if you had the long rifle, there's a lot dependent on what kind of sights you're running on that to even see the bar. But in addition to that, even if you're running open sights, is by the time you figured out that you need to use the thing in either situation, but it's probably,
Again,
regardless, it's going to end up being close.
We speak from experience here, folks, and we will tell you the bear charge story one of these days. But we've had firsthand experience of what a bear charge is like.
Yeah, but depending on how many warning shots you fire, you now have that many fewer. Not to bring it up again, Dee, but you have that many fewer shots when they might actually need to count.
We really got to tell this bear charge because I didn't even fire the first shot. I ejected the first round. Not like, oh my gosh, it was such a unique experience, but I don't want to relive it because it's like, holy crap. And you're sitting there wondering why I'm ejecting the shells out of my gun before the bear even comes to us. Okay, so yes, if you decide to fire warning shots at a bear, if you're using a gun, just understand those shots that you fire are that many fewer shots you have left in the gun to take at the bear. But having said that, conversely, if you're using bear spray, a can of bear spray is only going to last about 8 seconds when it's fully deployed.
Yeah. So, I think it's fair to say that with both deterrents, you need to use them wisely because you'll need to make your opportunity count. If your deployment is good, if you got to deploy, you better make it count.
Yeah. But hold on a second here, Steph, because I want to go back to environmental conditions because I hear gun people or gun proponents bring up extreme conditions all the time. So they tend to have much less faith in a can of bear spray operating correctly under adverse conditions. Because after all, Steph, a gun can operate in extremely cold weather. How about bear spray?
Yeah, that's a false argument. Again, the study that Tom Smith did a few years ago also tested the effects of temperature on bear spray. And I'm talking, we're not talking the difference between 60 degrees and 80 degrees. We went like at temperatures as cold as -10. The bear spray still deployed to distances of almost 15 feet.
Yeah, and that's good to know because there'd be a strong case against using bear spray if it didn't perform well when it's like just slightly windy or like slightly cooler. But that does not appear to be the case at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. You would need extremely strong winds, likely greater than like 30 miles an hour, and absolutely bitter cold conditions, like well under 10 degrees, -10 degrees Fahrenheit. And even then, come on, how many people are going to be out hiking in those conditions? So performance issues are likely, when they're trying to use those environmental conditions, when you're out, it's probably going to be overstated because people are going to stay in on those days.
And I would say, Steph, that performance of whichever tool you prefer, bear spray or gun, it's going to fall on the fate of the one using it.
Fair assessment.
So, Steph, you mind if I do a little off-the-cuff discussion?
Can I stop you? Have I ever been able to stop you?
Fair assessment. Anyway, I want to get back to having a careful discussion about the recent attacks in the West. Unfortunately, when these things take place, people often have knee-jerk reactions and they begin espousing what went wrong and how this could have been avoided. And sadly, there's usually a ton of victim blaming, and people just try as they might. They try to find someone to blame. It's almost like the bear cannot be at fault. They try to find someone to blame. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how that all occurs. You spent quite a bit of time in this realm with your wildlife human attack response training. Can you provide any words of like what do you guys teach the law enforcement officers or all the people you're teaching about? How do you react, or what to expect from the public, and how do you kind of deal with that?
That one's a hard one, right? So when you're talking about like in the media, a lot of times you get those polarized opinions, right? So you'll have the people that are just really sensationalizing every bit of it that they can for their ratings. But on the flip side, you get an amazing amount of people that actually absolutely think the bear was just being a bear. Why are you going, like, the bear was just being a bear and doing what bears do. It was the person's fault for being out there. And that is really tough, right? Because the family, and don't get me wrong, it's hard on all of us, right? Because we all have certain emotional things where we have our inherent belief structure also plays into that. But on the flip side, that family just went through something horrific. And then to have all of these people essentially villainizing a loved one that died in the course of this, or, you know, it's absolutely devastating for those people. On the flip side of that, there's also a lot of caution that has to be given to the people who are going in and investigating that, because the public will also go after the agency or the person. And I mean, sometimes quite literally the person. There's been cases where people's careers have been ruined because they got after this guy so bad for something that he did or said. So what we really are disciples of is process. At the end of the day, you go in there with you have to try as best you can to take your emotions out of it, which is not always easy, especially if there was a child involved. But you have to take your emotions out of it. You have to let your body, they call it muscle memory, even though that's kind of goofy since our muscles don't actually have memory. So we rely on them to go into their memory, to go in there systematically, do the things that they have to do. So, you know, they go in and they collect exactly what they're supposed to collect. You've got multiple people. It's very formative, very procedure based, because you know, you've got your incident commander, you've got this guy is the one guy who can talk to the public so that we aren't having disparate things going out to the public where then the public has one expectation and not the other, where we are not talking about kind of like in, you know, I had asked you earlier if we knew the outcome of this Glacier case yet, if it was a predatory or a defensive attack, and you said that there's still not a lot of information that's officially come out of that yet. That's important. You don't want that messaging to go out because that keeps the blaming, that amps it up a lot. So I don't know if I exactly answered your question there.
No.
You can't control the media very easy, so they're going to do what they're going to do.
You did, and I think that's the main point I wanted you to address with our audience. You'll find, in fact, you find it in today's episode, Stephanie and I will laugh and talk about bear attacks as a whole, especially the one that occurred to us. But you'll never find us joking around about an individual attack, because there's people's lives that have been turned upside down. And that's one of the things I listen to a lot of shows, and a lot of shows go in and dissect individual attacks, and then there's a lot of joking around, and it's like, gosh, I would hate to be the person who was involved with that or lost a family member listening to people joke around about all this. So it's a serious thing, folks, and that's what we're trying to impress upon you. An individual attack is something you never want to experience, and our heart goes out to all the victims, their family, and especially the emergency responders. That's got to be a horrific thing to experience. So I appreciate you giving some insight into some of that training you were involved in. So this actually leads me to the next thing that I wanted to address, because you asked me about the glacier incident. Less than a week after that fatal bear attack that occurred in Glacier, which was presumably from a brown bear, I'm pretty sure we're pretty positive it was a grizzly. But there was an article that came out. Now, it wasn't a real big national publication or anything, but I sent it to you because it kind of irked me. But it was talking about how, quote unquote, bear spray is a placebo. I'd love to have a chat with you about that. What did you think? Like, first explain to the public kind of what the author of that article was referring to regarding this most recent glacier attack.
Yeah. So it was essentially alluding to the fact that the use of bear spray is nothing but marketized misinformation hype. And like when you sent it to me, I was pretty sure you were just really trying to get under my skin because it really irritated me. Because, you just said bear spray is a placebo, right? Like that was, so if I'm being completely honest with you, bear spray is not carrying a gun. Okay, this is from experience. Carrying a gun is more of a placebo than carrying the bear spray. And again, I say this from experience because I have been in situations. No, let me back that up. I have seen plenty of instances where bear spray was deployed and it kept somebody from dying. I have also been in situations where a charging bear gets hit, and I don't say this to disturb any viewers or listeners. I've seen a bear get hit 14 times in the head and chest region with firearms ranging from literally all at the same time, a 30-06, a 30-30, and a 44. 14 shots to the head and chest area, and that bear was still coming. That's telling, when you've got 14, these people don't understand. A bear breathes, right? Like we would all agree that a living bear breathes, correct?
Yes.
It is going to breathe in the bear spray. The hitting it with a projectile and actually stopping the animal, if that animal is seriously ramped up, that is, I hate to say it this way. In my personal opinion, that is an absurdity. I will carry bear spray 24/7. If I'm carrying a gun, it's not for the bears. It's for, the trolls out there in the world. But that's my personal opinion on it. And again, I think that in my experience, I have the personal experience to back that up. And that is why that belief matters so much to me, because I'm going from my own lessons learned on that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the person in that article, I won't mention his name because I don't want to give him any more publicity than they deserve. But they're pretty much saying that victim died because of this misinformation or disinformation campaign about how great bear spray is. Yeah. Now, I will tell you there's been tons of social media chatter, this and that, about was bear spray deployed? What's all the situation? We're still waiting for all the details to come out. But I think what happens in many situations, Steph, when people hear of an attack, what they do is they formulate their opinion without getting any facts first. They formulate what they think happened, and then they look for any piece of information to
substantiate their
suspicion, even though all the other pieces of information might lead elsewhere. And so they're just looking to, it's kind of like social media. People don't go there for facts. They go there to get someone to agree with their position. So
yeah. And okay. A while back, you had mentioned something about when you were talking about the pros of potentially of a gun, and you were talking about how you have to be not only trained precisely to be able to react appropriately in that situation and still have an accurate and precise shot, potentially shots plural. Okay, would you agree that to get to that level of skill takes an absolutely astounding amount of practice?
I totally agree. Because I think, now I know I'm not the best shot, but I'm familiar with guns. I can use guns. I can pull out a gun. I can pull the trigger. And when I try hard enough, I can hit a target.
Yeah.
But doing it in that situation, I'm
It's tough.
so far from being any.
Yeah, because you're when your adrenaline fires up, your everything kind of goes a little bit wonky. That's the whole point of the adrenal gland and the fight or flight. It's to give you that boost that makes you a slight bit crazy, and overreactive, like and hyper reactive. But on the flip side, I asked you that question because people have the misconception that using bear spray you don't ever have to practice. They actually sell inert cans, right? So you can actually because this isn't an extraordinarily powerful pepper spray, for lack of a better term. It is a weapon. Let us be very clear that it is a weapon. And as with most weapons, it has a safety on it that you have to be able, number one, keep it where you can get it, but you have to be able to pull it out, deploy the safety, aim it, and spray it reactively and accurately. Now, granted, you don't have to be in the universe of accuracy level that you would need with a firearm,
Yep.
but you still have to have that routine built with your reflexes, so that pop the safety, point and spray.
Yeah.
Much easier though.
But I will say I do believe that it would be much easier to become proficient at getting ready to deploy the bear spray. I took bear spray training. It was a multiple day course. Could you believe that? Multiple day course when I was with the Forest Service. And yeah, we had to practice. They had a dummy bear coming down on a ramp, and you had to practice deploying it. And I think a couple of things came to mind when you were describing that, is that a lot of times if bear spray doesn't work or has failed to be deployed, it's because they don't carry it in the right spot. They might have it inside their pack or whatever. So having access to the bear spray, and I will firmly, there's a number of products that will carry that can on the front of your body so you can reach it easily. Wholeheartedly, I'm not going to endorse one or the other. Scat belt is one, but there's someone sent it to me, and I think it works great. Anyway.
Well, but in addition to that, there's some care that you have to also put into your bear spray, right? Like you can't just get a can of bear spray one day and it's good for the rest of your life if you've never deployed it. They have a shelf life. You can look at it, whatever brand you buy, but it's usually like a 3 to 5 years. And after that, it's like, okay, so let's put this in terms that the majority of our listeners would understand. It's like a can of Febreze or a bottle of aerosolized hair. It's like any aerosolized substance. After a while, the amount of pressure and aerosolization compounds that are in there are going to diminish. They're going to break down. Yeah. So you can't just get a can of bear spray and then 10 years later expect that bad boy to work like it did when it was fresh. You need to recycle it, and there's some good maintenance that you need to do.
Absolutely. I had something that was on the tip of my tongue, and then it was like squirrel, and it's gone.
I understand.
Anyway, I do think for the average Jane Doe and John Doe, or John Doe. I'm thinking Joe Doe. That doesn't sound. Average Jane and John. It is much easier. And I remembered the squirrel's back. It came back to me. So what I was going to say is, when you're in bear country, the most important tool you carry is not a can of bear spray. It's not a can or a gun or anything. It's your brain. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes in bear country, if you're walking and you smell a dead animal carcass, you can get ready and you could have the bear spray in your hand. Same thing if you're in a really dense thicket or you hear something, you can be ready. But a bear spray, having it in your hand or whatever, there's no problem. They have the safeties on it. With a gun, it almost worries me to think that people would be walking around with a gun all the time.
That movie Stand By Me with a kid.
Yeah. So anyway, it just seems much more realistic, much more appropriate to like be prepared with the bear spray.
And to that point that you were just saying, we have actually seen fatalities where the person was killed not by the bear. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was still going sideways. It was going badly, but where a person was killed not by the bear, but by a person shooting either the bear or at the bear. We have seen multiple instances of that. I mean, and some of them are crazy sad, because even in a case where like it was a plane like shooting at a like 180-degree angle, so flat plane. We've seen bullets ricochet off of the bear's ribs and go down and actually killed a person. So I mean, the one thing, like there's
no going back from a bullet. Bear spray, you
yeah.
can wash off.
It's gonna hurt, right? And it's gonna take a minute, and you're gonna definitely look like you have been crying like nobody's business for a while with the puppy factor going on.
Don't forget the snot's coming out. I had that
I would
one.
never forget the snot. But yeah, I mean, I honestly, it's. I know we try to give both sides of the story and not harp too much about our own opinions on these things, but I don't even understand how this is still a conversation of debate, because I've lived both sides of this argument.
That's absolutely correct. And this is really, really good stuff. We should probably get going because we're getting into almost an hour here, and this is really good stuff. So thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you one more thing. If you are to summarize things here, how do we do it? Like we've heard kind of point and counterpoint, pros and cons, like truths and falsities. What's a person who has no experience with bears or bear spray whatsoever? What's a person to do to make heads or tails on what to carry in bear country?
So I think it boils down to this, D. Lesson number 1, and this is a very, very important lesson. Bear attacks are super crazy rare. So don't let discussions like this one actually scare you away from enjoying your time in the outdoors. Rather, let these discussions inform you on situational awareness and how to be better prepared in case that lightning strike type of thing actually happens.
Excellent point. The outdoors is wonderful. Get outdoors, people.
Get outdoors, right. And lesson 2, bear spray and firearms can both have a utility in an unforeseen bear incident.
I agree with you there, too.
All right. I'm just spoiling me with you agreeing with me so much. So, yeah.
Don't ruin it for me.
All right. Okay, here we go. The lesson 3. It is absolutely impossible to predict how a bear attack is going to unfold. You know, it is a surprise. Is it a stalking event? Is it a defensive situation like a mama with cubs? Is it at night? Are you alone? I mean, there are so many freaking variables to actually say how you should react and what works best in every single situation.
So, answer this. Are you saying it's user's choice?
Yes, I'm saying that, but here's the but, and it's a mighty big but. Like we're talking like a J-Lo kind of but. I mean, I might be aging myself right there, but for the average Jane or Doe, you know, that person may not be familiar with firearms, and here's the big one: the people who have firearms who think that they're some highly skilled Green Beret, Delta Force, Chuck Norris wannabe or something. You're not, unless you legitimately are. Like if you're the ones you gave earlier, Navy SEALs, some Rangers, Delta
Army
Force
Rangers,
type.
I think.
I mean, Army Rangers, even like not 100% of the time. There's Army Rangers who don't do that all day, every day.
Yeah.
But honestly, unless you are a Navy SEAL or a Delta Force, you're not as amazing as you think you probably are. If you get surprised by a bear, most people have absolutely no idea how they're going to react in intense, split-second, life or death situation. And I mean, ask Daryl. Daryl, you tell them. Explain that.
Oh, that life and death situation of a bear charge? You're still alive, aren't you?
Luckily. Anyway, since these are unfortunate encounters, and they often they occur when people least expect it, and they happen, generally speaking, to people who aren't really trained for it, and yeah, so your best option would be to carry something that doesn't require a high level of precision and expertise needed for it to perform optimally.
Okay. So what you're saying here, Steph, it's easy to see. It is so much better to put up a wall, aka like a cloud of pepper spray or bear spray between you and the bear, rather than to try to make that well-placed shot that would incapacitate the animal quickly. So for the average Joe or Jane, that makes perfect sense that you would choose bear spray.
So can I tell you what I do, Dee?
Sure.
I carry both. I feel very comfortable with the firearm, but I like bear spray to be my first line of defense. And you and I both know in the world of wildlife how many predators are shot in self-defense, only to find entry wounds in the animal's hindquarters or, whatever. But that's probably a whole nother story.
I've got one more tangent to take because just now when you were just talking about the Army Rangers and people specifically trained for it, it just reminded me of something, and I had to snicker, and I'll tell people why if they saw me smile back then. You're describing these people that are like prepared for it. I don't know if you're familiar with the Meat Eater show, Steve Rinella and a bunch of the other folks on that. They're big time conservation. I have the utmost respect for them. Super guys. They're out there all the time in crazy places, and they're very, very skilled with firearms. They were up in Alaska, I believe, on an elk hunt, and they were sitting around. There's like 4 or 5 of them, including cameraman and everything, and they're on, I think it was a Fognak Island in Alaska. These guys that know firearms, know bears better than anyone out there, sitting around eating lunch. Surprise grizzly runs through their where they're sitting. Nobody's grabbing a gun. Nobody's grabbing bears. Like the one guy was grabbing ski poles. So like you are going to react.
Reacting.
Yeah, you just have no idea. And so I find it comical, but it's somewhat sad when people are always saying, "Oh, I would do this, I would do that." It's like bull crap. You have no idea what you're going to do.
You don't. You really don't. Because in your head, I mean, let's be cool, right? Like, in my head, I'm amazing. And I will always, it's going to, like the bear, I'm going to shoot the bear before it gets to Daryl, and it's going to skid to a stop. And I'm going to do my Captain Morgan pose, and I'm going to be like, see what I did there, bud? And Daryl's going to be like,
Yep.
That's what happens in my head. That is not what happens in reality.
Yeah, in reality, Daryl's ejecting the first round from his shotgun and then missing with the other.
He never gets the shot off. Yeah. I mean, we suck.
Anyway, this was a fantastic discussion, Steph. Thank you so much for having it. So, anyway, just keep in mind, folks, you're more than welcome to carry whatever makes you feel more comfortable. But I think it's safe to say that Stephanie and I agree that bear spray should probably be your first choice for the vast majority of folks out there. Now, remember, no tool is ever going to work perfectly every time. So go with the one that provides like the greatest amount of wiggle room, like for that oh shite moment. Because like we keep repeating, you don't know how you're going to react.
Yeah. So is that what you were saying the whole time? The bear was coming at us? Oh, shite.
No, I was actually saying, I was thanking my lucky stars that you were standing in front of me.
That is how I roll, folks. That is how I roll. That's the cool part. Anyway, on a side note, I do think we need to wrap this up for folks. But when it comes to the question of to spray or not to spray when you're in bear country, drop the bravado, as hard as it might be, or the machismo if you prefer being the macho guy. Keep yourself protected the best way that you know how.
Yeah, and use the bear spray.
Use the bear spray. So once again, folks, we love talking to you about wildlife and trying to clear up some of the misinformation that you might hear out there. But we really do love listening to you. So if you have any topics that you'd like for us to explore, please, please, please reach out to us. We would love having ideas on things to talk to you all about. So you can either reach us through the Wildlife for You Facebook Messenger, or you can email us at wfyquestions@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we really do love hearing from you. So whatever topic ideas you may have, complaints, even like good comments, we welcome those too. Send those to me. But we do thank you for listening. And remember, folks, when it comes to wildlife, your knowledge often means their existence. Thank you and be well.